I'm Eric Trommater, and this is UK Cinema History. This week, part 2 of our episode on the best of 2024 with Yasi Sofia, Sila Blume, Eric Trommater, and special guest Vern Quixote.
I guess I'll just do my top 10 real quick, and then we'll go back to Yazzie because she's got two more sections that she wants to cover, uh, and again, she of course put most of the work into this episode. Um, Number 10 on my list was a film that I think is also on Yazzie's. She's the one who got me to see it. It's called A Complete Unknown, of course. This is directed by James Marigold, who's not a director I had had that much positive experience with, but um, two of his films, without realizing he was the director of them, are films I've seen several times. He had directed Walk the Line, which I actually used to, about Johnny Cash, which I used to own on DVD, and not only rewatched but rewatched with his director's commentary, not realizing it was him. And the second was a film where it just happened to have been on HBO over and over again, and it's not a great film, but it was Ford versus Ferrari, which, like A Complete Unknown, to me, maybe not a great film, but a very rewatchable film, like even more rewatchable, I think, than a lot of films that are much, much better. And so when I realized I was in his hands, had a lot more expectation for it, even though I don't particularly care for musical biopics. But what the film does very, very well, as Yazzie pointed out, it's not a very good biography of Bob Dylan, but what it conveys is the kinetic energy of that movement, that time, and Bob Dylan's music. And I think back to Stanley Kaufman when he reviewed the musical Hair, and he said that the energy from the stage made him feel like the walls weren't going to be able to hold in all of that energy. And that was the kind of kinetic feeling that I got from watching A Complete Unknown, and that's why over and above things like Asteroid City, which I thought was great. Everyone knows how big a fan I am of Wes Anderson. That it was able to move into to my top 10. I highly recommend it, but I highly recommend going to seeing it in a theater. Make sure it's a theater that has a very, very sound system, because the sound dynamics of the film are very, very important to what it really is successful at, which is creating that kinetic energy. My number 9 film was a Japanese film called 18 by 2 Beyond Youthful Days. It is the best romance of the year, directed by Mashido Fuji. It's based on a travelogue by a video game designer named Jimmy Lau. And it is a very good travelogue and a very good romance, but it is also an absolute work of art in every single frame. It is just beautifully done. Um, my eighth one is going to be kind of a controversial one. Do not expect much from the end of the world, which number one, it has my favorite guest appearance. The director Yui Bowl plays himself in a cameo. But number two, it is yet another in the 2024's ongoing theme of films about or relating to film. It's about the shooting of a safety video, and it's intercut with scenes from a 1981 documentary. And really, what it is about what is art and the passing of time. Uh, Number seven is a film called um, Here. It's a Belgian film, a very simple story about making soup. It was directed by uh, Bas Devos, and it stars Stefan Gatto and Leo Gong, and it reminded me of the best of those very uh, quaint French films like Renoir used to make in the 1930s. It is very idyllic, and yet also, even though it really only has two characters, you don't walk away thinking like you've only just watched a two-hander. It feels like a full experience, and it is one of those few films where the passage of time actually makes you feel like you've passed that time with the characters. Um, I would move to one that I thought was going to be controversial with Yazzie, given her dislike of film from Iran, um, Seed of the Sacred Fig, which is contains real images of the 2023 protests in Iran as its final shots, and this is directed by Mohammed Rasul, who actually survived five different prison sentences in Iran for breaking censorship, and actually had to flee Iran with his cast and crew to make this film in Germany. And it shows because they are absolutely dedicated and passionate about telling the story. It's also a well-written script with with excellent acting, and um, quite honestly, is one of the best Iranian films I've seen. My next one would be actually, it was a 45-minute short by Hiro Kurosawa, no relation to Akira Kurosawa, and it was his film Chime. And why I love Chime is because it is a horror film with all the non-horror elements cut out. And condensed into a 45-minute film. And what it does beautifully is something Yazzie had hinted at with the ending of films like Civil War. It allows you as a viewer to fill in the gaps. It says, I respect your intelligence enough for you to say, I understand why this is happening, and just take us straight to the action. And while I wouldn't encourage every film to do this, it works extremely well. The film is called Chime. Again, it's only 45 minutes. It's right now only on Apple TV, but I do encourage people to seek it out. And then when I get to my upper echelon, uh, this one I can understand if people are going to be like, oh, there's Eric being all artsy fartsy again. But Janet Planet, directed by Annie Baker, which made a whopping $805,000 at the box office. But it is a wonderful film. And I'm just a sucker for these little independent films that have a child actor. And Julian Nicholson plays the mother, and this wonderful Zoe Ziegler plays the smart aleck little girl. And yes, we've seen it 100 times. It's Paper Moon, and yet I'm sorry, I've seen it 5 times now this year, and I don't repeat watch a lot of films, so something must be drawing me back to it again and again and again. And then when we get to the absolute upper echelon, I can't really decide between these two. Um, Love Lies Bleeding was directed by Rose Glass, who made my favorite film of 2019, Saint Maud, um, which stars, believe it or not, Christine Stewart. Yes, that Christine Stewart from those awful vampire films. A long way from Twilight, and Kate O'Brien. And it is a multi-genre film because it is about bodybuilders, and it is about steroids, and it is about crime. And it also contains just a wonderful performance by Ed Harris as Christine Stewart's father. And it is a multi-genre film that fills all of these genres terrifically. So in the steroid story, you have a great body horror film. On the other hand, you have a great crime film. On the other hand, it is a part of queer cinema because it is about the relationship between O'Brien and Stewart. It also has two central, I would call them fantasy sequences almost that reminded me, and Yazzie will know this is coming. It reminded me a lot of the work of our Lord and Savior Lindsay Anderson in If, because they are inserted out of left field in what is normally a realistic film, and where a less well-made film would not be able to get away with that. In this, you just accept it as a part of the course because it's just so darn well done. And then the other that I would say would tie for my top film was
Can I, now that you're
go
talking about
ahead.
Drive Away Dolls, can
Well, let
I
him
talk about,
finish. Let him finish. It's his
no,
last film.
because it is, no, because it is related to that. Like, bring that, but because they're so similar. Look, there is this Ethan Cohen movie that was so misunderstood, and it was Drive Away Dolls. And we had Margaret Qualley in Substance. Margaret Qualley is also here. Matt Damon, Pedro Pascal, and it is an amazing surrealist. Like the movie is full of surreal imagery, just like the movie that I know Eric is going to talk about right now, and just like Love Bleeding. This was another thing, another recurring thing that we saw a lot this year that made me so happy, and it's this comeback of a sort of Lynchian blend of surrealism into movies that look, has this very realistic look. That's it.
Yeah, Vern, Yazzie and I are encouraged to interrupt each other because we think it makes for better podcasts.
I know, but it's like I was laying in bed and then I was like, oh, these are all good films. Let me go get a pen so I can write it down. And then you had your whole rhythm going, and I was trying to make a list of the ones that I wanted to come back to. And then I'm like waiting for you to get to number one, and she couldn't hold out for that extra 10 seconds.
Oh, that's our Yazzie, and we love her for it because it's because without that passion, she would not be Yazzie. All right, my tag for number one is going to be, it was released in the United States as There's Still Tomorrow. Ancora Domani. This is a, another one of those that goes into the 2024 theme of directors showing their love of cinema, because this is filmed in a manner, it is filmed in the Romanesco language, takes place in Rome at the during the occupation after World War II. And I almost hate to say what it's about because I'm afraid people might not want to see it, but it is a comedy about domestic abuse. And that's all, the only way I can really describe it is, but it's filmed in black and white in a manner that um I understand, you think end of World War II, you're thinking, okay, so she's going for neo-realism. It's not a neo-realistic film. The films that reminded me of more were Mario Monticelli's best films, like Big Deal on Madonna Street, and I think his masterpiece, The Organizer, because it has none of the pathos of neorealism. You don't feel sorry for any of these people, but it has the villain as dolt. And it's a father and a grandfather who are just absolutely abusive to the main character. The writer, director, and star of this film is a TV actress in her name is Paola uh, Curacelli, and she is just absolutely wonderful. And but the thing is, the film, all of its rhythms are comic, and yet the theme strikes home because it takes place in 1946 on the day women get the right to vote. And the irony, of course, is that the women of Italy, when they get the right to vote, still have no rights at home because they're still the property of their people, their village, their their husband's father, and even when she tries to escape into to the village with her friends, she's still just the property of her friends. Uh, but the way this film really brings it home for me is its use of music, because the music is not period. There's some contemporary music. There's even a bit of hip hop in it, and each time you see a fight scene, the music counteracts that fight scene by being a love song or a sweet lullaby. And what the music reminds you of is that this isn't a problem of 1946, that it is a problem still today. That, yes, this is set in that time, but it's reminding you that this is not that we can't look back and say, oh, boy, weren't things bad back then. There's also a lot in it of old-fashioned camera angles, old-fashioned use of black and white, old-fashioned use of crossfades, and so it is actually so it is meant to give you that feeling. You are supposed to feel nostalgic, and but again, and the only film I can compare it to that's like this would be Fellini's Eight and a Half. It's a comedy. It's just an extraordinarily well made comedy. And we're not in the United States used to comedies being made on this level. It is almost too beautiful to be a comedy. And yet it worked. As a matter of fact, in Italy, this film was the number one grossing film of last year. And in 2023, actually, when it was released in Italy, and it actually outgrossed Barbie. And here is what I'm going to say, and people know that I defend Barbie more than most of my cinephile friends. If you want to show a film to your daughter that's going to do more damage to the patriarchy, this film will do 1,000 times more damage than Barbie. And on that, I'm gonna first open up the floor, and then we'll get back to Yazzie, who's got two more pre-prepared sections for us.
I didn't get the name of the last film, and then there's the film, the Iranian film with the fig, and the 45-minute horror film. So I just want to come back and get the names because I didn't have a pen.
You know what? I'm gonna list
Okay,
them all back.
let me tell you, this. The movie is C'è ancora domani, and it's it's there's still tomorrow, and the filmmaker and also the actress of is Paola Cortellesi, and she is, that you know why it reminds you of the neorealism. First of all, the opening of the film, like when the mother is giving like the kids breakfast, reminded me of my most favorite Italian movies, A Special Day, when Sophia Loren is giving the kids like the breakfast and everything. But her face, Paula's face kind of dominates the movie. And this is very near-realistic to me of all that. And the way that the feminism is kind of contextualized in the film, it's again just like evil does not exist, is so subtle. It's and because all over the movie we hear songs about voices being shut out, and these women keep being shut, like they're keep being slapped on the face, and everyone's telling them to shut up at the moment. Yeah, it has like that level of violence, as like domestic violence, as Eric said. The ending is so hopeful that it's that it I don't know how to put it. Like and the way that the timing that it chooses, like that this war against fascism. But when women come together, that is the beauty of the movie. That's what I can say about it.
Terrific, Yazzie. I'm putting my whole list in the comments for you, and for those listening on the podcast, any film that we discuss is are going to be in the episode description. Yeah, I'm going to have to work on saying the names too slowly. I guess I'll just read I'll read them off more slowly. So my 10 best films were A Complete Unknown, 18 by 2 Beyond Youthful Days, Do Not Expect Much from the End of the World, Here, Chime, Seed of the Sacred Fig, Janet Planet, Ancora Domini, also known as There's Still Tomorrow, and Love Lies Bleeding.
Okay, and about the seed of the sacred fig, and Gina Malbet, that Muhammad Rasulov. So the story with him, it's why I don't want to talk about it. It's because it's so personal to me because I kind of know him, and he made this movie, and I'm sure that it's going to be like one of the pioneer or like the trailblazers of movies that are made after the revolution in Iran with like women, like without women wearing the headscarf, and he made the movie uh uh in in that environment, and so he has been kind of captured by the government. He was prison, he everything like, but and then somehow he was able to get the movie out to for Cannes Film Festival, and uh, and he kind of escaped the country. He escaped Iran and arrived to Cannes. It's very like fairy tale kind of story. The day that his movie was shown in Cannes, so he could appear on the red carpet, and it was such an emotional moment for him and for everyone involved and everyone who knew him. And they gave him like this award that they created for him specifically because of his fight. I mean, the how important art, and again the same message that we were talking about here, that how important the effect, the impact of art and culture, and specifically cinema, on the political environment, on society, like the stories that should be told to, this uh, uh, the importance of the storytelling in cinema and in art and cinema as a medium of telling the history, of another perspective to history. This is like, I'm going to connect that to the complete unknown. So what is important in complete unknown is this, uh, you know the importance of folklore music, and how it is used, and passing the torture of fight for the civil war, for against oppression, for social justice, through music, through folk music, the importance of folk music, and how like they go hand in hand, the civil rights movements with art, with songs, with people who contribute their music and their art, and their movies to the for the sake of justice. And that is the I think the beauty that we see all over the a complete unknown. Because I was keep asking people, I was keep asking Eric, like everyone, that because I watched the movie, and then the next day I went and watched it again, and then on the third day I went to watch Nosferatu, but then I went to watch Complete Unknown again, and I thought to myself that is this because of my love for Bob Dylan? Is it like very biased, so I should not talk about it? Or is it actually a good movie? But this movie has so many things, that this resisting against censorship, that is the theme in the sacred fig, the seed of the sacred fig, and also in complete unknown, you know th- th- and
Yeah, see, I'd like to tie one other great film from
Sure,
2024 into
sure,
that, and
yeah, of
that's
course.
also from Iran, which was Terrestrial Verses, which is uh, a portmanteau basically of nine different stories in Tehran, and the director Ali Al-Ansari, it connects them all because each and every story is about people in some way, shape, or form asserting their civil rights against authority. And I think uh, that would be a great triple feature: A Complete Unknown, Terrestrial Versus, and Seat of the Sacred Fig, right there.
Exactly. And another Iranian Swedish filmmaker had like a movie that like that movie slipped through the cracks because of various of reasons, of course. And it's Apprentice by Ali Abbasi. So he made this movie with Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong about Trump. So the movie kind of the problem that happened was that the people who didn't like Trump didn't want to watch the movie, and but those who liked the movie, they didn't like the movie because of the story that it was telling about Trump. So that was the thing that and that brings me back to the thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the room, that how are we going to these movies? Do we allow our biases, our cognitive biases, to decide which movies we are going to watch? And with that, we miss. This is our loss as cinephiles, as film lovers, to hear these stories, to see these stories, or to see these stories being told by an artistic vision. That's the thing. So I bring The Apprentice here because it is a good movie, and that was again one of the movies that kind of subverted my expectations. I did not expect to see what I was seeing, and yeah, so I really recommend everyone to go see that movie, at least to support a filmmaker, a kind of indie filmmaker who tried so hard to get the budget for his movie. Even for that sake, you kind of make the sacrifice to go and watch his movie and to see how he is telling his story about like a political figure right now.
I haven't seen The Apprentice yet because of the exact reason that you just said. So thank you, Yazzie. That's going on my list now.
It's a very good movie. Honestly, it is a good movie. So I don't know. Like I have this very long list. Some one of the a part is in this list is the movies that I'm gonna call the movies that is impossible to describe. They're so bizarre that are impossible to describe. Sasquatch Sunset is one of them. Hundreds of Beavers is the other one. Uh, and kind of and so many indie movies I can put.
As far as Janet Planet goes, there's nothing innovative in it. Like I said, this is the Peter Bogdanovich has done this type of film with the Paper Moon. Yeah, we Little Miss Sunshine it works on the same thing, and yet number one, these things work on me, and I think on many filmmakers because it is so effective when you have the right person uh, playing the child. And in this case, this film is great, and it's on my list because Zoe Ziegler is great, and you know I have a hard time defending this as a pick, and yet I can't not have on my top 10, in all honesty, a film I've watched 5 times this year, and without basically lying to myself about what my actual favorite films of the year are. And so, I don't want to ruin anything about it because this is one of those films that don't watch a preview for it, don't read a review of it because. Um, the element of surprise is so incredibly important, and the things that come out of this little girl's mouth, you have to hear them directly from Zoe Ziegler. And so again, um, maybe this should be an embarrassment for me, but yes, it is definitely worth seeing, and I definitely recommend it.
Okay, on the list of the movies that these good indie movies, father daughter relationship, since Vern you are interested in that, I have a Ewan McGregor movie with, actually with his daughter, in Bleeding Love. Bleeding Love is a road movie, a father daughter on a road movie, and he's trying to help her daughter overcome, Clara McGregor as like the daughter, to overcome uh, her issues. And it's such a heartwarming, beautiful. I'm gonna call these some of these movies American neorealism, and they're so well made, so I said, like, they on this way, just like any other uh road movie, they come across different characters. It's very like a straight story, David Lynch. So they they meet with so many different people, and uh you know the lessons to be learned from people. So that I totally recommend that. And we talked about the that Drive Away Dolls, and Love Lies Bleeding, and so Hitman, the Richard Linklater movie, and another kind of road movie that I can put next to Bleeding Love is Thelma. uh, Thelma, with Joan Squibb. You put a 95-year-old actress in a road trip movie with her grandson, and she's been the victim of a scam. Again, a very, I would call it a neoreal, American neorealism. Such a heartwarming story. There is one scene that I have to talk about it, and it's like when her grandson trying to help her on the phone to log into computer to her bank account, and that moment of achievement when she's able to log in, it's so beautiful. and uh and yeah, so she becomes the victim of a scam, so they have to go on this trip to figure that out. So we talked about so much violence in that, that There's Still Tomorrow. I have an action movie that again subverted my expectations, a movie on Netflix, and it was Rebel Ridge. And Rebel Ridge is an action movie. It's a Rambo movie. It's the story of Navy veteran, Marine veteran that tries to the story that we are so familiar with. He's going to like kind of it, find out about the corruption of the system, and that. What is interesting about this movie is, in an action movie, you see not one drop of blood, and you don't see any weapons. In the world of John Wick, I think what this movie achieved by that was really interesting. It has comedy, it has like, uh, again, full of like heartfelt moments, but yeah, that's it. That's what I thought, that it really worth mentioning because of you know what it's a unique accomplishment, I think, for an action movie these days. You don't there's no blood, no bruises, no guns. Like, what he does is he kind of take away the guns from people, and aligned with the theme, finding justice. So yeah, I thought that I had to talk about that. And yeah, this my list is very long, so I don't know if anyone wants to say. I have an animation movie, the Flow. because of, as a mother of two cats, I had to, black cats actually, I had to talk about Flow as the story of a black cat in the world. Again, the theme of, the environment, the world is overflown. So this cat and a group of other animals, they're trying to survive. It is not a Disney movie. The animals do not talk in this movie. And of course, I cannot like leave the room without mentioning the 50th Woody Allen movie, Coup de Chance. This man, we kicked him out of New York City. He made a complete French movie in Paris. Coup de Chance was one of the best movies of the year to me. And my other amazing movie, of course, I have to mention it before we leave. It's Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. How, and of course, Anora with Sean Baker, that again, he is the guy who is doing that American neorealism. He kind of elevated that genre. Anora is, what Sean Baker is doing to me is like John Cassavetes. But, and speaking of John Cassavetes, another person that I forgot on the list of people we lost, Jen Rollins, like in Gloria. So, John Cassavetes, just like MCU, has this world. We see a 2 hour movie, but and then we go to see like another John Cassavetes movie, but you think that you are familiar with these characters. It's like he took them from the other movie and brought them to this one. And this is what Sean Baker is doing. He creates this kind of MCU for himself, you know, for his characters. And what he's doing is that he's removing the stigma from the sex workers. And the other thing, I'm going to connect that to that Ewan McGregor movie that I mentioned,
Which
Bleeding Love.
you should point out is a running theme throughout all of his films.
Yes,
The
exactly,
sex workers.
exactly. So
Oh, and I
there's
want
that
to also
sex
point
worker
out
that
real
they
quick
come across. Oh,
before you go on, that
of course.
Anora was only made for $6 million, and has already crossed $100 million threshold. So
And won the
again,
best
that
film. Yeah, won Cannes Film Festival as the best movie. And that's again another reason for like instead of canceling people or like saying that, it's not a big budget box office, but we should support these filmmakers. This is his fifth film. His like 2 years ago, he had the movie that we loved, and it was Red Rocket. And that movie was that's the definition of underrated. That's the movie that everyone should see to destigmatize, to remove the stigma from the sex work. This it's not Boogie Nights, it's not Sugar. His humanistic approach to these characters is it's kind of something happens in this movie, and I thought, and it's similar to that Spanish movie that Sila mentioned, Close Your Eyes. It's the disappearance of a character in the story that reminded me so much of Antonioni's The Night, La Notte. This when characters disappear from movies, it was also something that happened in the Happy Hour of Yamaguchi movie that we said evil does not exist on his first movie. I think this theme of disappearance of characters, that mystery surrounding that, just like what Sita said about Close Your Eyes, that emotional void, that existential crisis, it's something that is so well done in Sean Baker's movie. And uh, there's, and again, with this movie also, just like Cassavetes' movie, they're not messagey. These characters are so tangible, so real. So you can just lay back. Reminded me also so much of Woody Allen movies, that the reality of these characters, you don't feel like you're watching a movie. You feel like you're living with these people. And yeah, these are like some. I think right now, and oh, Jesse Eisenberg with Kellen Culkin had this movie called The Real Pain. That is also a road movie. They're cousins, like they go to Poland to, you know, to see like their roots, to see their grandmother's house. And that is, kind of like Alexander Payne's Sideways, like Holdovers that you said. The stories about the connection between people, real people. And the way, these movies are full of nuance and life. And uh, yeah, so, and that's why when someone disappears from the movie, you feel it. You it highlights the invisibility of these people. There's a very beautiful scene in Anora that after she's a stripper. So after a night, she's coming back home, and she just gets on a bus and goes home, and her roommates ask her that if she bought milk. And this is a very common conversation in movies. But to me, it stood out in this movie because, you know, it's like we don't, that, like the, how these characters, the feeling that it invoked as like this person as a real person, and how we watch them, how the invisible people in the society, and when their stories are being told, the people that disappear and we never hear about them, the vanishing of people, and every single one of these people have their stories. And uh, you know this poetic approach is, I think it's so, that's why it reminds me so much of Antonioni, or a Woody Allen movie.
Thanks, Yazzie. I know you've got one more section on, well, we're just going to call it the Refuse to Retire Club. Um, I'd also like to point out now when I put my top 10 list on Facebook like I do every year. Very much friend of the show, Luke Baxter, co-host of The Things That Made England with our good friend Fiona Powell and David Crowther, commented that he had never heard of a single one of those films. He's over there in England, so the Bob Dylan film hasn't been distributed widely there yet, and asked why Paddington in Peru wasn't on my list, and of course that's not released here until February. And I'd like to point out that next year we're going to have another section just as long, probably, of films we haven't seen yet from 2023, because, of course, the way the schedule is backloaded by Hollywood for these for the so-called Oscar race makes it so. For instance, it was February before those of us who don't live in New York or LA got to see the Zone of Interest last year, and I wonder if there's another Zone of Interest film coming up. Yazzie, I'm going to turn to you first because I know you did some research into this. But what are the films you're most looking forward to in 2025?
Like my 2024 list hasn't over yet. You're like sending me to, yeah. What I'm looking forward to is Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and Maggie Gyllenhaal's musical about Bride of Frankenstein, The Bride, and Kogonada's movie with Colin Farrell, and of course Greg Araki. He's having this movie called I Want Sex. So Greg Araki is again one of these, with Doom Generation, and he is uh, he remained this indie controversial filmmaker. So I'm really looking forward to that. And from a woman filmmaker, we have from the direct, we're going to see a movie from the director of We Need to Talk About Kevin. But that movie uh, with Ezra Miller and Tilda Swinton, it was a masterpiece. I think like Lena Ramsey, she wrote the script, and with John C. Riley, the movie about mental health. I really recommend that movie to everyone before they go see her new movie, Love Die. So yeah, she's going to have these are the movies that I'm looking forward to next year.
Thanks, Yazzie. Before we get back to Yazzie's list, I'm gonna open up the floor. Anybody have anything they want to add or any questions that they might have?
I just watched a very strange film that had me feeling very weird because I did not know if I like it or not, or was it good. It was so out of my realm of understanding. It's The Dead Ringers with Jeremy Irons by Kronberg. That film I found quite weird in a disturbing way. I just couldn't. That's it. That's all I have to say about the film.
I'm glad you bring up Cronenberg because he when I was watching Love Lies Bleeding, which obviously I thought was one of the two best films of the year, all I could think of was the influence of Cronenberg on this film, especially the use of steroids and the use of body horror throughout it, and what a big influence he's been. He's almost become a grand old man of cinema. Today, which which is that's so interesting to see when you see like the enfant sauvage become the influential director. Um, but back to you, Yazzie, and the next section on your list.
I thought you were going to mention Substance when you said like the influence of Cronenberg on today's
Well,
movies and everything.
we've discussed this. I'm not as big a fan of the substance
Yeah, Substance.
as
Substance is actually, and I mentioned your section, Humane. Actually, Humane is Caitlin Cronenberg's movie, Cronenberg's daughter. So that is a very interesting movie. Now that you brought Cronenberg up, it's the story of it has again the environmental theme. So people of the world come to this conclusion that just because the population is like this causing a lot of problem for the environment, every year people send one person from the family to go to die. Simple as that. So every year, a group we see a kind of like a group. This is the theme of that movie. Now that you brought up Cronenberg, so yeah, I really recommend Humane. It's on Shutter, and I think you can also find it on Netflix. I'm not sure, but it is on Shutter. It was you can see this is Cronenberg's daughter. Very bleak, very dark movie. And yeah, so something about Substance that I can say about like also that shares it with Anora is this very interesting take on the fairy tale. We had Wicked this year, and we had, Vern is going to like it. This Jekyll and Hyde story, and of course the Cinderella story in Sean Baker's movie, this modern take on fairy tales of a Cinderella story of like, a princess looking for the prince, and I think and what the thing with Substance that I really liked was this, you have to come back home before like you turn into a pumpkin, and this Jekyll and Hyde theme of it, and uh, which it's like Alice in Wonderland, Alice in Hollywoodland. This to me, the Substance was the Wicked. really. Like if we want to see like that theme of, you know, the theme that kind of I'm getting to it for my actually my best movie of the year, which is Beetlejuice, and is, you know, the beauty, the thing that we also see in Complete Unknown, you know, that it is in the Dylan song, that it says like, uh, the losers today will win tomorrow. What is ugly today will be beautiful tomorrow. What is beautiful today will be ugly tomorrow. This circle of life, you know, we had it also in Mufasa. So yeah, these again, these are very themes that every movie shared this year. So yeah, yeah, I don't know. Substance. Why didn't you like Substance, Eric? That's my question.
Well, to me, it falls into that nether region of films that aren't scary enough to scare me, and yet aren't interesting enough on their own to be a good dramatic film. It the central gimmick, which I'm not, this is not a spoiler because this is given away in the first few minutes, is that a woman has to keep herself young, has to switch places with an aging version of herself every 7 days. And of course it is a metaphor for capitalism and the cost of, and the cost of beauty and what have you, and it is just a little too on the nose and too over the head as for that metaphor, and yet the scenes themselves, they're not done in a frightening way. It is too timid to be body horror, but it is also um too didactic to be interesting as a film on its own, and so it just kind of meanders until its twist ending, which to me is a twist ending for the sake of twist ending. So and so no, I'm in a minority on the film, and I understand that, but no, I didn't particularly care for it.
Don't you put it in the satire comedy category? Because if you see it as a dark comedy, then it explains every, like, you know, the alter ego, and you know this, it's like a satire of Sunset Boulevard. I know that that's a, you know, like a Sunset Boulevard made by Cronenberg, you know.
I think
Wouldn't you
it's a
see it
little
that
too dumb.
way?
I think it's a little too dumb to be a comedy, if that makes any sense. Because for comedy to work on that level, you have to have a sense that of the intelligence of the concept and the intelligence of the thing that's being satired. You know, to me, they're not satires of tropes; they're simply tropes throughout the film. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I told you today something today, and I said what makes me laugh is like everyone's telling, everyone's keep like asking Demi Moore that, oh, if you get so vulnerable, like, babe, you show yourself like your body not in a beautiful way, and then the movie is the commentary of the same question that they're praised, that they're asking her. I think this, you know, this absurdity of the whole thing surrounding the movie is the more comedic thing. But
That's all the time we had for part 2. Join us for part 3, where we'll start talking about the more prestigious films as well as upcoming trends for 2024. Wherever you're listening, please give us a like, subscribe, and write us a review. Thank you very much for listening to World Cinema History, and we'll see you next time.